Are we like sheep? This is my question today. How many of you have ever listened to Handel's Messiah? And you know there is that one oratorio, part of the oratorio, one of the songs out of there is, are we like sheep that have gone astray? Now, Handel was not the most creative person. He actually got the text of that from Isaiah chapter 53, verse 6, where Isaiah says to us that all of us are like sheep. Now, how many of you have ever raised sheep? Anybody had sheep on your farm or been around sheep in here? Anybody? Oh, we got one. Okay. Tell me about sheep. What are sheep like?
Fluffy and dirty.
Dirty animals, okay. Are sheep the smartest animals in your barn?
They're bad.
They're bad, yes. That's funny, thanks, kid. All right. Well, from what I understand, and see people who have, my experience with the sheep is going to the Norfolk Zoo when I was in 6th grade and petting them in the petting zoo. And it's the last time, and the first time and the last time I've ever seen a sheep in real life. Okay? So I don't know a whole lot about sheep, but what I've been told is that they are pretty stupid and that they have to be led, right? Now we've bred these sheep over countless generations to be like that. But in the time of Jesus 2,000 years ago, especially in the Middle East and North Africa, sheep and goats, you can't really tell the difference between the two of them. They both kind of look the same. Only a shepherd could really tell who the sheep were and who the goats were. And so it's no surprise that when we listen and hear the Bible, we hear in the Old Testament through Psalms 23 about the Lord being our shepherd, and in Isaiah and in Ezekiel, the prophets saying that the sheep are the human beings that live in this world. And that Jesus uses the same imagery here in the gospel lesson. It's no surprise that for them it was very important to talk about sheep and goats, especially in an agrarian society. Now, I don't know about you, but I'm not a big fan of being called a sheep. All right? And in fact, if you go on Reddit right now, and if you go look at all these things, there's a new term that people have used in the last 10 years called sheeple. Have you ever heard of sheeple? People who were sheep. And so usually it's all those rebels who are in college calling us sheeple. You know, people who just follow blindly without questioning anything. And so, you know, for us to talk about sheep and being shepherds, having a shepherd over us, many people just think that we don't have a lot of control, a lot of power, and it's very much a pejorative type of term. But that's not what Jesus means for us when we hear this gospel lesson. See, the truth is we are like sheep. And according to the Bible, that's the answer that we should be happy with, even though sheep are dumb and have to be led and aren't the smartest animals in the world. It may seem like an insult to us. Now, the truth is that we start off in this world as helpless human beings, right? As little babies that need to be taken care of by other people. We can't make it on our own. We can't even lift our head up perfectly for a good 3 or 4 months, right? And then still, it takes us another 18 years to have gainful employment, if not longer, right? And so, and even as we get older and as we live our lives, I think in so many ways we're still like sheep because we are always looking for a shepherd. We're always looking for somebody to guide us and direct us and help us understand the world around us. There's a great little story. I had a friend of mine, actually Bill, the pastor next door, was telling me about this. He said when he was in seminary, they had an opportunity between their 2nd and 3rd year of seminary to go to Jerusalem. It was a Holy Land tour. I wish I'd gone to that seminary and they send you for free and you get to go walk in the steps of Jesus. I never got a chance to do that. But he said his professor, they were on a tour bus, and the professor was going on and on and on about the character of sheep and the character of shepherds and the Old Testament and how it all worked. And they were in the hill country. And all of a sudden, the bus was stopped by a flock of sheep crossing the road. Now, the professor said that sheep are only led, not driven. You can't drive sheep, because they kind of scatter everywhere. Well, the sheep were all going the same way, and there was some guy chasing them. And so all the students on the bus started laughing, thinking their professor was telling them something that wasn't true. The professor got red-faced and angry, and he stopped the bus, and he got out, and he called after the man, "Hey, you, are you the shepherd of these sheep?" And the man stopped, and he looked at them and said, "No, I'm the village butcher, and these sheep are afraid of me." The truth is that we are like sheep. And if we're not sheep, then the other thing the Bible tells us is that we're like goats. And if you remember Matthew chapter 25, Jesus gives us an illustration of what it's going to be like at the end of our lives. That when we're there at Judgment Day, we're going to be in front of God. God's going to take a look at some of us and say, hey, you're the righteous ones. When I was hungry, and when I was thirsty, and when I was sick, and when I was in prison, you helped me out. And the unrighteous will be said, when I was sick or thirsty and hungry, and etc., you did not help me. Now, the funny thing is, both of the righteous and the unrighteous, the sheep and the goats, reply to Jesus and say, well, when was it that I knew who you were? Or when did I help you? And Jesus responds, well, when you help the least of these, then you help me. We are familiar with that passage, aren't we? And it's funny, I was reading Heather Disher. She's wrote a blog on the website of the United Church of God, and she writes this about sheep and goats. She says that shepherds protect sheep from the environment, whereas goat herds protect the environment from their goats. Anybody ever raise goats? So for us to be God's sheep, we must depend on God to defend us. But if we push, if we take, if we destroy, and if we bully, then we are the goats. All right? So on one hand, you have the sheep who listen to the voice of the shepherd. On the other hand, you have the goats that kind of have a mind of their own, who like to do their own thing, who are independent. Anybody sound like any of us? That really is who we are as human beings, isn't it? We're either people who listen to God or people who like to have their own way. In verse 1 through 5 of John chapter 10, Jesus talks about the character of the shepherd. He says the shepherd cares for his sheep, and when he calls out to his sheep, they will follow him. What Jesus is saying is that when we hear the voice of God, when we are in that sheepfold at nighttime, we're all protected and safe. And then we can hear the voice of God bringing us out to the pasture where we can be living life abundantly. And in contrast to this image, he gives us the image of a thief and a bandit who comes over the fence to come and steal, and the sheep aren't going to recognize his voice. Now the other image we have in this John chapter 10 is where Jesus calls himself the gate. Now, how many of you have ever worn one of those t-shirts that said, I am the way, the life, and the truth, or it had all the names of Jesus on it, and Jesus is the way, or whatever. But have you ever heard of Jesus saying, I am the gate? It really doesn't have a great catch to it, does it? Like, what does it mean to be, I am the gate? Well, what Jesus is saying to the Pharisees and to us is that when we go through that opening and when we follow the voice of God, then we are led to a better life. Now, I think there are many gates in this world that we go through, but there's only one gate that leads us to the fullness of life in God. And if we are the sheep of God and we hear the true voice of the shepherd, then we will follow that voice. And Jesus warns us that there will be people in our lives who will try to entice us out of that sheep pen into different ways. Now, Jesus doesn't come up with this on his own. He actually goes back to Ezekiel chapter 34. And here's the lesson of the prophet then. And here's what the prophet says back in the Old Testament. He says, you shepherds of Israel who have been feeding yourselves, should not shepherds feed the sheep? You eat the fat, you clothe yourselves with the wool. You slaughter the fatlings, but you do not feed the sheep. You have not strengthened the weak. You have not healed the sick. You have not bound up the injured. You have not brought back the strayed. You have not sought the lost, but with force and harshness you have ruled them. Ezekiel goes on in chapter 34 to say that God was really unhappy with the people of Israel, with the leaders of Israel who have let down the people who follow them. In our gospel lesson, Jesus is talking to the Pharisees, and whereas I don't think Jesus is really critiquing the Pharisees, he's trying to explain what he means by being here and healing people on the Sabbath. But I think it's clear that, if Jesus were to come back today and take a look at our world around us, who would he look at? Who would he be criticizing when he looks at our leaders? Who would Jesus call the thieves and the bandits of our world? Another thing about this John chapter 10 that I love is that when we listen to the voice of God, we will follow God. Now, how many of you feel like you could hear the voice of God when you pray? At times. Hopefully you've had at least once in your life that you felt like God is leading you in the right direction, right? That's one reason why we live as people of faith, is that we believe that when we are going through hard times and struggles, that God is there for us and God will give us the right direction. Every time that I've moved to a new church, it's been preceded by months and months and months of listening to God tell me what's going to happen next in life. And sometimes I'm listening and not hearing anything, and other times I'm feeling very gracious and happy that God is helping us do that. The truth is, we need to listen. Now, I think sometimes, if we're hanging out in a sheep pen, we're turning our music up too loud. We have other distractions. We have other people coming in who are giving us different instructions, and we get caught up in following different pursuits, and sometimes we forget to listen for the voice of God. And as I think about the greatest challenge for our church, and I'm speaking church in the big C and what it means to be a follower of God, I don't think the biggest challenge are the atheists or the people who are not a Christian. Honestly, I think it's people within our church that try to lead us in a different way. I think the greatest threat to our identity as Christians are the thieves and the bandits who crawl over the fence to try to teach us things that look awfully similar to what Christ has taught, but aren't anything close to it. Now, in our culture, there is a movement among some groups that say that if we are blessed by God, that if we are rich, then we are blessed by God, and if we're poor, then we are cursed by God. And I heard a little bit of that phrase this week as I was paying attention to all the news about the health care bill. That there was some lawmaker, I don't know where he was from, I'm not going to say who it was, but he kind of had these words that just really shocked me. He said, well, we need to make sure that health insurance is cheap for everybody, and that means that if you lead an immoral life, then you don't deserve to receive health care. And kind of saying that people with pre-existing conditions like heart disease and diabetes, things like that, deserve to be where they are. And it was a shock to hear that. Because I was thinking, but that's not what I believe. So I think people have been making arguments over the last 7 years about where healthcare should be, and I think I'm not going to say one way is better than the other, because honestly, both healthcare systems are kind of in a bad place. But I think what's at the heart of our conversation should be, well, do we believe that people deserve to be taken care of? I want to think about the issue of car insurance. Now, if you drive a car, you're given a choice here in Virginia that you could have insurance or you pay an uninsured motorist fee, right? And the thing is, if you ever get hit by somebody who has an uninsured motorist fee, your insurance has to cover your own repairs, right? So even if you get hit by somebody who doesn't have insurance, you're still on the hook for it. And I think insurance is a just-in-case option. We never know when accidents are going to happen. And it's the same thing. We share the risk in our health insurance plans for people who are both sick and healthy. And then we have made some decisions in our country for a social contract that we have Medicare for those who are retired and who have worked all their lives. We have Medicaid for the disabled and for those who are extremely impoverished. And then we have a great, excellent military veterans system for anybody who served in the military or served during warfare. And when you think about those three classes of people, many of them are probably high risk. And these three programs have reduced the insurance premiums for the rest of us, by putting the sickest and the costliest to care for out of the insurance market. You see, as a nation, we have believed that we care for the oldest, we care for the neediest, and we care for those who put their lives on the line for us. Now, like I said, I think the debate about health insurance that we should be having is not whether it looks one way or another way. It should be, do we believe that everyone should receive health care in a way that can help people be abundant in their life? The United Methodist Church, through our General Conference for the last 30 years, believes that this is a part of the social contract of being a part of a government. That a government does have a duty to take care of its people. It's something that we should agree to. And as I think about the words of Matthew 25, and I think about the words of Ezekiel 34, and I think about these words from John chapter 10, I realize that maybe we need to listen to what Jesus had to say when we talk about these things in our world. The other thing that Jesus says in John chapter 10 is that we are called to have abundant life. And I don't think he means that we're all supposed to be wealthy or rich or have a bunch of stuff. When we think about who Jesus was talking to at that time, he was talking to people who were living just trying to get through day by day, just find the food for the next day. They were living a life where they had to grow their own food in their backyards. And if you've ever been in that situation where you haven't known whether your meal is coming the next day, you know you're just living from day to day. And what Jesus promises the people, and he promises the Pharisees, is that God wants for us hope. He wants us to live a life that is can be achieved to its fullest. We're very blessed to live in our country where many of us can live an abundant life. Final point I'd like to make today is that the gate that Jesus says he is not only for the elect or for the good or for those we deem to be the ones that belong in our church. The gate is there for everyone. We are asked to share with others this wonderful story of a God who loves us so much by offering himself to die and be resurrected. God's desire for everyone in this world is to hear and to accept this salvation, to be able to recognize the voice of the shepherd. We hear earlier in the Gospel of John that for God so loves the world that he gave his only begotten Son that we might have eternal life. And so I encourage you to go forth and tell the world about the love of God so that others may come to understand like you have. The truth that allows us to find freedom and happiness and love.